people online on the... Hello. Hello. Camille. Sorry for the delay. We start soon. Thank you. So, thank you very much for attending the event. My name is Philippe Galland. I'm from the Agence Française de Développement. I'm very honored to moderate this session on behalf of the IDFC Equality Working Group, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you on gender equality and climate change event at COP27. At first, I would like to address my special thanks to the Egyptian authority for hosting the COP27. Many thanks as well to the IDFC Secretariat and Chairperson for the opportunity given today to share experiences and best practices on gender and climate. And thanks to our panelists for attending these events, of course. The public development banks are key players in the implementation in the 2030 Global Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals. It is particularly true for the gender equality and climate change goals. The achievement of those targets, and especially number 5, remains behind schedules. The impacts of climate change are not gender neutral, but remains difficult to evaluate. The one sure thing is that women are hit harder by climatic disasters. We can, and we do better both on mitigation and adaptation. To address men and women inequality in their climate policies, development institutions have elaborated priorities, tools, and programs devoted to gender and climate. We thought it could be very interesting today to identify initiatives and projects that could inspire all of us and provide interest input into the debate on enhancing gender and equality mitigation and reduction. The panel today will therefore give the floor to different members of the IDFC Club, but also to the Green Climate Fund and to the Boston Consulting Group. Question will be taken by our panelists at the last intervention. I'm glad to welcome first our first speaker, Madam Selina Reiter, Head of Policy and Strategy in the Office of the Executive Director at the Green Climate Fund. Selina, could you please explain us what, as the Green Climate Fund, placed gender and equality as a key element of its programming architecture? And I would also to understand what are the men's requirements in terms of gender and equality policy and practice in order to become an accredited entity of the Green Climate Fund. Thank you, Selina.
Thanks so much, Philippe. Good morning, everyone. Small group, but great to see everyone here. I think I do have a PowerPoint, so if that could be brought up on the screen, that would be fantastic. Great. And in the meantime, I'll thank AFD and IDFC for the invitation to speak today. I think we've had a fantastic partnership with the IDFC. Great to see more and more of the club's members becoming our accredited entities. And the other thing I have to the other people I have to give a shout out to actually before speaking is our wonderful gender and sustainability practice back at our headquarters in Songdo. Seble, our senior gender specialist, couldn't be here today, so she's asked me to come and speak. I'm not a gender specialist myself, but the team back in Songdo is just so passionate about gender, social inclusion, Indigenous peoples issues, so I'm hoping I can channel some of their spirit at the event today. So Philippe, you've already mentioned the topic. I won't go into it again, but just flick through the presentation. I don't think I need to tell this audience why gender matters on climate change, and Zineb, you'll give a fantastic presentation later that goes more into the impacts of climate change on women and girls, which we know can be more serious than for others. The other thing is we know climate change amplifies existing gender inequalities, but the main point I'll focus on here is the last one, which is women and girls as part of the solution. So from GCF, we are the operating entity of the financial mechanism of the UNFCCC. So our gender approach is very much aligned with the UNFCCC's gender approach, and it's focused on similar pillars, so capacity building, knowledge management, on gender balance, participation, women's leadership. We look at this both institutionally ourselves as Green Climate Fund, as well as through our projects and programs. That's where some of our main activities are around gender responsive implementation, so our gender assessments, gender action plans, which I'll go into in a second, and then of course critically the question of monitoring and reporting. And all of this is of course designed to ensure that we actually better understand those differentiated gender impacts, as well as actually capture women's potential as agents of change, and then look proactively to address those barriers and challenges that are actually hampering women's participation. So what is it that makes, we think GCF a bit special? We're a relatively new institution in the climate, well, in the financing landscape, and then particularly in the climate finance landscape. And one of the advantages of that is we've actually been able to incorporate gender practice and policy right from the very beginning. So our governing instrument actually enshrines the commitment to gender sensitivity and to gender mainstreaming. And since then, we've actually elaborated in our gender policy adopted in 2019 and our updated gender action plan, a gender responsive approach. So it's really built into our institutional structure. And what are those commitments? We're committed, again, at an institutional level to ensuring we have a gender mainstreaming approach internally. That's in our human resources practices, in our policies, for example, around sexual exploitation and harassment, as well as one particular area of focus going forward, I think, will actually be gender balance in our board, because that's been one area where we still have a bit of work to do. In terms of, we're also committed to seeing this commitment actually flowed all the way through our policies, strategies, guidance documents. The key area, of course, where we flow through that commitment is in our partnerships with accredited entities, the partners who channel our funding, and I'll come to the nature of that in a second. And the key element there being that actually every funding proposal we fund has to have these gender assessments, has to have a proactive gender action plan. So that's everything, public sector, private sector, adaptation, mitigation. We're basically looking at that gender analysis and then how the funding proposal can actually be constructed to better reinforce those gender outcomes. So I hope I'm up to, oh, sorry, I should have had that slide up. No, I actually have the right slide. So this is the deep dive into our gender policy. You'll see on the left-hand side there the objectives. So really having a comprehensive gender approach, promoting climate change investments that advance gender equality, as well as minimizing, of course, the related risk, and contributing to reducing the gender gap. And I won't go into the rationale again, we've touched on that earlier. But how does this play out? That, I think, is the key topic we were asked to speak to today, and of interest to IDFC and other entities looking at working with us, is basically we apply our gender policy at two levels. So we apply it institutionally through our accreditation process, and then we actually also apply it to each individual funding proposal investment that we review. So at the institutional level, basically through the accreditation process, we would be looking at whether the organizations that work with us actually first have in place gender policies, but also have in place gender policies that are materially equivalent to our own. So this can be quite a substantial endeavor for those who have not actually had gender policies in place. So it can be quite transformative from an institutional response, because we're looking at both working with the entities to put those policies in place, but actually critically also to put in place the experts, the people that can implement those policies. So building gender teams, building gender experts that are then able to both work on the gender assessments and action plans, but actually work all the way through the project lifecycle on integrating gender into project implementation. And one important tool we have here for our accredited entities, particularly direct access entities, is that they can also access our readiness program to get some support to actually put those capabilities in place to meet accreditation. And then secondly, we also look at it at the funding proposal stage. So as each funding proposal comes across our review desk, we're looking for that gender assessment, for the actual gender action plan, and then that's subsequently followed up in our implementation, monitoring, and reporting. So it's those two components that I'll do a deeper dive into. So what is the gender assessment? Well, this is basically a comprehensive look at the gender situation, in gender inequality situation in relation to a project area. And the expectation around this is that there will actually be significant stakeholder engagement in developing the gender assessment. So that's engaging women's affected by the project, women's groups, potentially ministries, if they exist in the country, civil society organizations and the like. So through that participatory process, ensuring that everyone that has a stake in that project, and particularly women's voices, can influence that project design, as well as surface any challenges that might be anticipated, and so we can also look at the risks. And what we have, I've just got a screenshot of it there, but we do have a useful how-to guide on our website as well in terms of mainstreaming gender into the GCF projects. So after the gender assessment has been done, each project is also required to come up with a gender action plan, which again is a proactive plan to address those challenges that have been identified. And you'll see some of the elements that these gender action plans contain on the side there. So actually a baseline, understanding what the current situation is, concrete ambition level targets and indicators, actually the commitment to have the financial resources and capacities to do the gender implementation and monitoring, and then reporting through our annual performance report process. There is a template provided for accredited entities to use. And just to note, this is actually, the Gender Action Plan is a time-bound document, so it really is intended to be something that we look at and check back in on. But it is flexible. If changes are required along the way, as new evidence arises, we look at those together with our partners and make those changes. So what have been some of our lessons? Well, opportunities. We are actually very proud to say that 100% of funding proposals so far have gender assessments and gender action plans. So having that requirement in itself, setting that expectation, can be quite transformative. The other thing that's key is this is actually flowed through the project legal agreements as well. So the project legal agreements also commit our partners to basically putting the resources behind the commitments and behind the gender action plans. We have, as I mentioned, annual reporting. So this comes to us in our project reporting annually, and that looks at both progress on the gender action plan as well as wider gender mainstreaming actions. And then I guess setting expectations, through the accreditation process, that to partner with GCF, this is really the kind of standard that we want to aspire to. This is the type of change that we want to see in the gender space. What have been some of the challenges in implementation? Of course, the quality of what we see still varies. This is very much linked to the capacity within our partners to actually undertake these actions. One of the challenges in particular, I think, has been if people tend to see just doing the gender assessment, doing the gender action plan as the end of it, they're not necessarily engaging the gender experts fully, engaging the communities and affected women fully throughout the project cycle. So that's another lesson, to have that engagement, not just upfront, but actually through project delivery. Obviously, differences depending on the country in the level and scope of stakeholder consultation. I think, like everyone out there, we have seen impacts of COVID just on the ability to actually get out and engage communities and stakeholders through the process. So I'm going to end, I know you're behind time, so I'm hoping to catch you up a little with just a couple of case studies. One's from an IDFC partner, one's from a non-IDFC partner, but we have here FP072. This is a project around strengthening resilience of smallholder farmers in Zambia that we're working on with UNDP. And this project, in its gender action plan, had a target that 62% of the beneficiaries of the project should actually be women. So this is actually getting climate information services to the smallholder farmers on the ground, actually delivering gender-sensitive training materials, improving access for women smallholder farmers to irrigation, new water management practices, and new agricultural practices, and also importantly, drawing on Indigenous and local knowledge and strategies to implement this project. The second one, which is with our IDFC partner, CAF, this is an interesting one because this is actually coming from our project reporting. So the other one was Agenda Action Plan. This is actually the results that have been reported by the partner on the ground. And this is a solar project in Chile. And with the gender plan focus on indigenous and national migrant women. And you can see here that the project has actually reported activity on the ground, engaging women's groups, women champions, to actually hold workshops on gender equality, improve environmental education for women and girls. And then what this project is doing in the energy sector is actually promoting women's access to work as well as access of women-led local enterprises. So you'll see here that 40% of new hires at the corporate level, 10% participation of women in the labor force for this project. Look, that might still low, but the industry benchmark in the energy sector is very low, 1.5%, so a significant change there. And then over 60% of the local procurement for the project are actually through women-led enterprises. And then actually also doing training of women in installation, management, operation of the PDBs that are part of this process, project. So that brings me to the end. Again, the team left some of our key messages here. I'm not going to go through them all in detail, but really focus on this one. Do not settle for gender sensitive, go transformative. We may not be there yet in terms of being fully gender transformative, but certainly at GCF, all of our approach, institutional approach, policies are trying to strive for this approach. And we do see the great potential, I think, of our partnerships like with IDFC members in actually having that multiplier effect as we work to get more gender responsive and more gender transformative. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the fact that you presented concrete operations on the field. It's very useful for our audience. I guess you will have many questions at the end. I'm sure about that. So thanks very much. Very clear and innovative presentation. You have presented your own policies, but integrating gender and equality in funds applications, it appears to be the good way to include gender mainstreaming on systematic basis. So you do it, but there are many financial tools for climate, which can be much more. They can make many progress on that. So first, it's a very good way. Looking at the same objective, but this time from a government institution point of view, integrating gender into intended or nationally determined contribution constitutes one avenue worth exploring to influence climate policies. So to illustrate this, I would like to welcome Thierry Labiastre, head of the French Development Agency in the Philippines, and Camille Leblois, gender and climate expert at the AFD headquarters. Camille, Thierry? Could you please explain in more details how did you enhance gender and equality in the Philippines government, with the Philippines government through the nationally determined contributions tool?
And unfortunately, Thierry is not here, I think. Oh, well, I can't see him. He was supposed to start the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Camille. Okay, we can propose you can do the presentation.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Thank you, thank you, Camille. I will support you.
Okay, thanks. So as Philippe just introduced me, I'm Camille Leblois. I'm a gender expert at AFD HQ in France, working a lot on climate change support to AFD activity and the nexus between gender equality and climate change. So we wanted to introduce to you a concrete example also of a project that AFD has been supported and financing in the Philippines. So the idea of this public policy loan is to support the government of Philippines in the implementation of its nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. As you can see in the slide here through three reform areas: strengthening planning, financing, and institutional linkages for climate action, enhancing resilience to climate impacts, and strengthening low carbon pathways. So I won't go a bit too much into detail on this, trying to focus more on the gender aspect. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this program as a public policy loan as result matrix, so with the challenges and responses that are exposed here. So the idea is also to enhance the possibility of financing projects, climate smart projects, that because the country so far has lacked financing for such projects. So as you can see here, it targets also different sectors and like food systems, ecosystems, but also mitigation aspects through reduced emissions. So it's quite wide, and I will focus more now on the gender aspect and gender and climate nexus. So next slide, please. Thank you. As it was also mentioned in the introduction of this side event, there is differentiated vulnerability of men and women to climate change and climate change impacts. And it's particularly important in the rural areas, and this is more or less worldwide, but it's also significantly impacting the Philippines with a lot of climate hazards, with significant impacts on crops. So not only, let's say, everyday climate change effects, but also hazards like floods or other disasters. They impact mostly women for different reasons, because first of all, women are quite involved and in some areas more involved in the natural resources management, and also they can be more vulnerable also to disasters because of structural inequalities, like different education, different access to resources than men. And thirdly, there is also in some areas of the country a nexus between climate change impacts and conflict impacts that will enhance even more the vulnerability of women. Yes. Can you just turn up your microphone, please? I can't see the presentation anymore. Thank you. Yes, so just to say, at maybe at more national governance levels, climate change related laws and policies have been gender blind for a long time, but for quite a long time now, because since more than 10 years, I will detail this afterwards. They have also had gender focus, but maybe lacking some operational support and clear implementation in the field. So there is also room for capacity building at institutional level, so at the level of different national agencies in charge of implementing climate change related policies, and especially the NDC. So there is room for enhancing the gender equality and climate change nexus at this level, and still room and needs for developing tools to monitor and evaluation gender consideration in climate actions. So next slide, please. But I can't see the slide. Yes, thank you. It's back. It's actually, can you go back to the previous one, please? Thank you. Yeah, so as I said, the Philippines started to address gender equality in climate policies since 2009 at least, with a clear will at national level to have a gender sensitive approach on climate policies with different pillars that you can see here, active involvement of women in decision making and integration of gender concerns in policies and programs. That would be a kind of gender mainstreaming, and assessment of the differentiated impacts on climate policies on men and women. And still, since then, this willingness to enhance the gender and climate nexus has been underlined also in different policies, leading to the first nationally determined contribution of the country in 2021 with the gender analysis, specific gender analysis that was supported by UNDP to identify better how to integrate gender in the NDC and in climate policies at the global level. So this gender assessment has been done last year, and a gender action plan has been defined with concrete actions to enhance this gender and climate change nexus and to make sure that gender equality is addressed through the NDCs. So that's what leads to our last slide, please. And the support of AFD to this specific part of the NDC. So, as I said in introduction, AFD already finances the public policy loans for the implementation of the NDC, but has put on the table additional resources for the financing also of the implementation of this gender action plan that was already has been already defined with the support of UNDP. So it's actually a strong basis for gender mainstreaming and enhancing gender impact, gender equality through the NDC of the country. So there are different pillars and different activities that are targeted through this action plan, and a technical assistance grant that we found for this implementation of the action plan. So we expect to start the services in the beginning of 2023. And we have defined with CCC, the National Authority for Climate Change, the main priorities of this technical assistance. That would be, for instance, the creation of an NDC working group on gender, definition of a gender toolkit related to the NDC activities, better gender mainstreaming in monitoring and evaluation activities of the NDC, capacity building of gender focal points at within the different NDC agencies, etc. So this technical assistance program is planned to start in 2023, and we are really looking forward for it because, as a conclusion, we are quite convinced that this is a quite interesting approach to mainstream the gender and climate nexus in public policies and also at a national level in all activities that support a country to reach the commitments of the Paris Climate Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Camille. We're all expecting that this program will, the positive result of the progress and programs. Very inspiring presentation. I think it opened many perspectives for supporting states' accomplishments toward gender and equality. And this is a very good way. So thank you very much. Very inspiring. Thierry is not there? No? So we can continue. While gender and equality is a key factor to leverage sustainable and inclusive development in all countries, development banks have a unique role to play. In this context, in September 2017, IDFC, under the impulsion of TSKB, decided to form the IDFC Sustainable Development Goals 5 Gender and Quality. The group has been very dynamic. Our UNDP Gender and Quality SEAL themes, including eliminating gender-based pay gaps, increasing women's roles in decision-making processes, or eradicating sexual harassment at work. The working group has been also committed to explore operational dimension of the gender equality and new commitments during the Fixed Financial Commons Summit. IDFC working groups has consistently proven flexibility to take up new issues such as gender and climate nexus. So today, I would like to introduce two members of this network, the TSKB, the Turkish Sanayi Kalimba Bankasi, and the Islamic Development Bank ISDB. We'll start with you, Madame Khalif Alam. Madame Khalif Alam, you're woman empowerment specialist at the Islamic Development Bank. Could you please, I think you're online. Havif, can you hear us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, could you please tell us more about how IDSB take into account gender and climate in the bank investment activities?
Thank you very much, Philippe. And I think I've also have a presentation, if we could put it on.
It's on the screen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you for the invite. And I'm really delighted to be given the opportunity to share today with you the ISDB work and how it integrates gender and climate in the bank's investment activities. Next, please. So the Islamic Development Bank is a South-South multilateral development bank, which was established in 1975 with its HQ in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We have presence in 11 regional hubs, the older ones being in Morocco, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, and Senegal. The work of the ISDB can be seen around the world with operations in 4 core regions, Asia, Africa, Europe, and South America. And beyond our 57 member countries, we also provide support to Muslim communities in non-member countries, including those affected by the conflict and natural disasters. Please proceed to the next slide. Next, and then next again. So ISDB initiated a realignment of its strategy very recently as a swift response to the multitude of challenges facing its member countries. And the aim was to set the overall strategic direction of the ISDB work for the next 3 years, 2023-2025, including promoting green growth and fast-forwarding women's leadership in the green economy. So the ISDB realigned strategy has 3 focus areas: boosting recovery, tackling poverty and building resilience, and driving green economic growth. Our development interventions over the next 3 years will be driven by 2 key pillars. The first one being centered around supporting green, resilient, and sustainable infrastructure to enhance the lives and livelihoods of people, especially women and the most vulnerable. While the second pillar addresses the promotion of an inclusive human capital development, focusing on areas such as universal healthcare services and nutrition and food security. As you can see, climate change and women and youth empowerment are cross-cutting in this strategy. The bank is seeking to align its operations with the objective of the Paris Agreement and support operations that enhance the alignment with its member countries' NDCs, all using a gender mainstreaming approach. Next, please. So the climate action practice and the women and youth empowerment practice both sit in one department named Resilience and Climate Action Department, and these 2 practices increasingly working together to design gender-sensitive climate action. Next, please. In year 2019, was marked by the approval of the first ever ISDB climate change policy and its women's empowerment policy. So here we have the four policy pillars of the climate change, going around mainstreaming climate action, the bank's operations, promoting climate change, resilience by assisting the member countries in building their resilience and reducing their vulnerability to climate change risks, supporting transition to green economy and leveraging resources from the various sources, including private sector, development partners, and philanthropic foundations in an effort to meet the substantial investment needs required to address our development targets. Our climate finance is set to represent 35% of ISDB annual commitments by 2025. Just as a recap, in 2021, the climate financing accounted for 31% of ISDB's commitments, so good that we're on track. Next, please. Next, please. So now coming to ISDB Women's Empowerment Strategic Framework, which was also approved in 2019, and later we developed the Operation Strategy and Action Plan for 2020 and 2025, guiding our work in women's empowerment. And the policy is centered around four pillars as well: improving women's access to services and productive resources, mainstreaming women's needs in IDB operations and projects. So, and here again, as a requirement, we also required to have a gender analysis performed for every project that we have. The third pillar focuses around promoting women's agency and participation, with a special focus on fostering women's role as agents of change in building community resilience to climate shocks, and as well as building their and strengthening the capacity and engagement in the decision-making process for more effective and inclusive climate change solutions for the benefit of all. The fourth pillar of the strategy focuses on strengthening learning and capacity development of our member countries to lead on their women's empowerment national plans. By 2025, next please, 50% of ISDB operations will effectively contribute to empowering women within ISDB member countries. Next, please. Next. In terms of financing, the ISDB has a sustainable financing framework, and under this framework, ISDB has issued Green Sukuk, which is the Islamic equivalent of a green bond, raising 1 billion euros, which have been fully allocated to 11 green projects. A sustainability sukuk in 2021 was also issued, raising $2.5 billion, and that's the largest of its kind, which will help finance a range of green and social related projects targeting several SDGs, as you see here. Next, to see the social, so around the next please, around several SDGs ranging from poverty reduction to education, to also gender equality and improving socioeconomic advancement and empowerment of women. So increasingly, we're doing more work on the interface between climate and gender. And here are some examples in the next slide, please. So the first one is our partnership with the GCF and the first grant funding secured from the Fund for Regional Readiness Program, which is leveraging private sector for climate action in 5 West Asian region countries, with a total amount of $2.7 million. And here there's, with the engagement of the private sector, there's a lot of opportunity for environmental education and work for women. The Islamic Development Bank was also recently awarded a grant under the NDC Partnership Action Fund to support Palestine to develop gender-responsive NDC implementation plans for 6 sectors. And this is under implementation, which will be implemented later this year, beginning of 2023. And recently in the COP27, we've had multiple gender and youth related events in climate change context, including with partners such as UNICEF and ILO. We're also happy to say that in Egypt recently, the Arab Coordination Group in COP27 announced a $24 billion financing by 2023 to address the global climate crisis. Of this amount, the ISDB will contribute an amount of 13 billion US dollars. So we're really looking forward for more partnership, and we appreciate more collaboration to ensure gender transparent climate actions.
Thank you, Raf. We have to go a little bit, sorry, 10 minutes left, and it was very interesting. Thank you, Rafi, and we start late, so very interesting and very inspiring, actually. So we know how much TSKB was important for the IDFC club. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Madame Alara Karbiseli, your assistant manager, development finance institution assisting our Sherpa and activity as IDFC TSKB co-Sherpa. So how does TSKB address gender equality and climate change that remain major challenges to reach the SDG agenda? And how does TSKB support climate action while embedding gender perspective in its finance solution? So, Ms. Alara, the floor is yours. If you can respect the 5 minutes, would be nice for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. I will try my best. So I have also a small presentation we can put on the screen. I will appreciate. So thank you very much. I will just start with a very short introduction of TSKB for our audience. TSKB is the first privately owned development and investment bank of Turkey, and its mission is to promote the inclusive and sustainable development of Turkish economy by providing its services in corporate banking and investment banking and advisory services. So having said that, in this first slide, I would like to talk about what TSKB is doing in favor of climate change and gender equality. To start with climate change, combating climate change and transition to a low carbon economy are key issues for TSKB. And over the years, TSKB has strengthened its roadmap on climate action with its medium to long-term targets. For example, as you may see here, TSKB aims to keep the ratio of climate and environment-focused SDG-linked loans in its portfolio at the level of 60% by 2025. Moreover, having published its first climate risk report in 2021 and having joined recently among the Net Zero Banking Alliance signatories, TSKB is also planning to finalize the end-to-end integration of climate-related risks in its portfolio by. As for the gender equality side, we can just stay in the first slide. As for the gender equality, back in 2016, TSKB had a marking point in its sustainability journey and took an important step in the social inclusion by providing a fund from AFD in order to support women's employment and gender equality in the workplace. And for that, TSKB utilized a specific tool to analyze the performance, the companies, and help them increase the capacity on gender mainstreaming by offering them tailor-made action plans. So this approach has been implemented successfully and has been replicated with other DFIs to leverage the impact and to raise awareness in the market. Moreover, TSKB has strengthened its capacity and impact while developing gender policies, but as well as joining in different and various working groups and initiatives focusing on gender issues, such as IDFC Gender Equality Working Group. For example, within this working group, now we are currently working on a project with an external consultant to map gender finance of the IDFC members. So we can say that gender equality and climate change continue to be TSKB's strategic priorities. We may move to the next slide. So at this point, the main question is how we try to integrate gender equality in our climate finance. How can we support and accelerate the climate solutions while applying a gender lens? So as emphasized today by Selina and by other panelists, more and more data and research reveal the vital correlation between gender equality and climate change. It is shown that climate change affects women and girls disproportionately, and the existing gender inequalities are further amplified as a result of these gender norms. And the challenges that we face today due to the climate change, such as competition over natural resources, energy transition affordability, demand for new skills in the green sector, and they all have a very distinct gender factor. So there is a substantial need for a climate action solving both sustainability and gender equality, and the challenge is to do it right. As TSKB, what we try to do is that besides our funds dedicated for women-friendly companies, we try to integrate gender approach as a cross-cutting issue in our operations. We observe more and more that this nexus between the climate change and gender equality is being addressed systematically in the sustainability agenda, mandates and investments of our stakeholders and of other development organizations. So in line with this, we try to improve our internal capacity to perform in-depth assessment and analysis of social, economic and cultural impacts arising from our investments that we finance. And more briefly, within TSKB, we have our sustainability management system. And under that, we have our environmental and social impact, social risk assessment model that is applied by our engineering team to mitigate all kinds of environmental and social impacts arising from our investments. And in addition to that, we have a social expert within our engineering team.
So the last sentence,
analysis and social impacts and carry out gender-focused activities such as conducting interviews with women employees to understand the working conditions or encouraging the companies to adopt some gender-sensitive good practices, and all that enable us to identify the challenges and opportunities and tackle them and make the necessary adjustments. And lastly, I would like to...
We need to end, Laura, please. Thank you.
Okay, I will finish.
Thank you.
I would like to look more on gender-segregated data, which is important for transparency and accountability and measurement. And another challenge is the lack of data and information on gender. So what we are trying to do is to strengthen our capacity to quantify our impact on SDG 5. And we follow our with corporate clients regarding the level of gender mainstreaming. So in summary, the climate crisis is not gender neutral. It is important that public development banks intentionally, systematically and proactively integrate this gender lens in the way that they rethink the sustainability. So it is important that we support climate mitigation and adaptation investments through a gender approach and find the best ways to elevate gender equality. We know that there is still much to do, but by collectively mobilizing, we can just play a substantial role and ensure that gender equality is reflected in our operations. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having highlighted again the role of public banks in the gender and climate nexus. Now let's take a step back. So I would like to take advantage of the presence of Madame Zineb Squali from the Boston Consulting Group, your managing director and partner from the Casablanca office. In the light of your recent research of this nexus, what is the BCG perspective?
Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to share with this audience a few facts and a story, if we hopefully have the time. We've discussed since the beginning of the panel the fact that women are disproportionately impacted by climate change. I think now there is significant evidence, significant research that this is the case, but if I may leave you with just a few numbers that tell this story. The first number is the one on the top left. That's the UNDP number. So in 2015, the United Nations Development Programme did a study on the displacements that happened during that year due to natural disasters. And 80% of the people that were displaced in 2015 by natural disasters were women. Second number, when it comes to employment and income, so 60% of sub-Saharan African women work in agriculture, and we know how agriculture is going to be impacted, and as a result, the income of these women is going to be significantly impacted. Third number I wanted to leave you with, and this is coming from the Malala Foundation. 12.5 million girls are at risk of school dropouts every year. Because when there is a natural disaster, families tend to favor their boys going to school. And so that's 12.5 million girls every year that can leave school. And there are lots of other numbers that we can share around water scarcity and around the fact that women carry a heavier burden. So I think the evidence is there. And what also is there is that there are lots of projects that are targeting this issue specifically. And so what we did at BCG, we have estimated the impact of climate change on women. And this impact is, we've estimated that this impact is 20 years. This means that climate change might set gender equality back by 20 years. So this means that in 2030, gender equality might get back to the level it was at 2010. And because, again, of all that we have been saying since the beginning, meaning that there are impacts in all of the components of the global gender gap, the education, the economic participation, the health and survival, etc. But again, I want to say this is something that's already out there. There are lots of projects that are happening in this field, and we should continue having more and more investments and more projects that are targeting women and helping them increase their resilience and adapt to climate change. But there is also something else that is less documented, but that is equally important, which is the fact that the way climate action is unfolding, it could also be unfavoring women. And this is much more counterintuitive because climate action, that's all the positive efforts that everybody's doing to reduce emissions, to adapt our lives to a warmer planet. And so what we have seen is that under the current trend, climate action could also be setting gender equality back by 15 years. Again, that's counterintuitive, and that's why it needs explanation. So obviously, women will benefit from living in a more sustainable planet, as well as men, and even more than men in some aspects. Their education, their health, their livelihoods will improve. But what our research is showing is that women might also be at risk of missing out on the green economy's massive investments and job opportunities. And I have 3 examples of that. By 2030, 65 million green jobs will be created. The highest paid, more stable ones are are requiring what we call STEM education. That's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Today, women only make up for 35% of STEM students globally, which means that they might be at risk, again, of missing out on these job opportunities. Second example, by 2030, $500 billion will be spent by companies in highly emitting sector, such as building materials, industrial goods, energy, to upskill their employees. That's meaning to help their employees get new green skills. The problem again is that these sectors are historically male dominated, so mechanically women are less likely to participate from these retrainings, and that is increasing the gap between men and women in these competencies that are key for the jobs of the future. There is also something around what's happening in entrepreneurship. We know that female entrepreneurs get less funding than male, but in green tech, this is even higher. So female entrepreneurs in green tech get even less funding than men. So that's what gets us to what I was saying before, the fact that climate action could also have a negative impact. So what is it that we need to do to have a climate action that serves these 2 major interlinked challenges, sustainability and gender equality? And I promised you a story, so here it comes. We've been talking a lot about, you've heard words like gender mainstreaming, like gender responsive, gender sensitive. My experience with these words is that outside of this room, outside of the gender conversation, these are words that are not very self-explanatory. And so I have come to the conclusion that actually stories of actual projects help, and so here it is. Here is the story. The story is happening in the 90s in the beautiful city of Vienna in Austria. In the 90s, planning officials in Vienna realized and that's the picture that's coming, that's a park in Vienna. They realized that after the age of 9, girls almost disappeared from public parks, while before that age, boys and girls would equally come to parks. So they did some research and they came to the conclusion that no, it's not that all of a sudden when they turn 9 they're not interested in going to parks. It's because of the way parks are designed, with their single large open space where boys gather at the front and multiple football cages. So boys feel welcomed, girls feel like they need to compete for space. So they just stopped going there. They also realized that their public transportation system, for example, is much more geared towards patterns that are mostly male. So that's for transportation use between city centers and suburbs, direct trips at mostly set times. And women trips are completely different. They're much more fragmented. They require multiple transportation modes, and they don't necessarily happen during rush hour. And so through these examples and many others, they realized that the urban planning that the city had, the urban planning approach that the city had, that was supposed to be for everyone, was actually not gender neutral. It was women blind. And so this is what's happening with climate action. This is what could be happening with climate action if we're not specific enough, if we do not specifically take into account women's needs. Because we think that this is a given, but history is filled with stories where even though we think it's a given, this is not what is happening. And so what it requires what I call intentionality. So intentionality is the fact that even though we have a project, an investment, a legislation that is supposed to target both women and men, we need to intentionally make sure that women will equally benefit. And so from the story of Vienna and many others, intentionality means at least those 3 ingredients that need to be in each and every single green project, green investment, and green legislation. So the first one is making sure we specifically take into account upfront women's needs and behaviors, because the default perspective is not necessarily always women's perspective, so we need to understand women's context and where they operate. The second thing is we need to involve women in the design of projects. And the third thing is we need to measure specifically the impact on women, the impact of projects on women. Again, not as an afterthought to be able to fill in some sort of form to get a grant, but as a forethought that is implemented early on and that helps better understand where we stand. So I think that just right in. I will leave you with one last thing. I will talk to you again about the story of Vienna. Every year since 2009, except for COVID years, Vienna has been named the best city in the world to live in. So why am I telling you this? Because what the discussion around gender responsive and the discussion around gender and climate should not be just good for women. It is good for the economy, it's good for the planet, it's good for the communities. And that's the narrative that we need to get out there much more often, because when we have women sitting in climate negotiation tables, when we have women leading our cities, this does not just benefit women, this benefits the economy to start with and benefits the whole of their communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very, very good to hear you actually and to stay a little bit late. Open questions? 5 minutes for open questions to the audience, if you may. Hi. Last chance, because we are late and the next panel will come. Okay, so we have all seen through this panel, concrete solutions. We'll see how donors can implement into their gender application, gender mainstreaming. We have seen very great public banks, how they are devoted, and you address very interesting perspectives. So thank you very much. I was very honored to I will stop there. I have still many things to say, but I will stop there because let's say, to conclude, so how we do better to develop this agenda. This is just the beginning of a long story between climate and gender in all the sectors, actually, because gender should be mainstream in all the sectors, not only climate. And thanks to you very much for your participation, and thanks to our panelists again, and sorry for all these technical issues. One question? Sorry for that question. Can you present yourself?
Thank you very much. I am Mabel Emmanuel from Nigeria, and I am the UNCCD National Focal Point from Nigeria. I enjoy your discussion, but I am not happy because I came late. I would have started it with you. In Nigeria, smallholders farmers are women, and most of them are affected by climate change. But they have a challenge. They don't have access to funding, and the government is not giving them the needed attention to address their challenges. How can women in that category be helped to access finance for their projects? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Selina, I give you the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, and apologies you came late. So I'm at the Green Climate Fund. I'm not our gender specialist, but our wonderful team did share a few examples of projects, our investments with me. And a couple of the strategies that are being used in the gender assessments and action plans for our projects are, for example, so specifically recognizing, start with data. As we said, start with the baseline, specifically recognizing women's participation in that area, engaging the women through the project design. So that's step number one, is as the investment is actually being designed, go out, speak to the local communities, speak to women's organizations if they exist, incorporate those concerns into the baseline. And then in terms of the gender action plan, actually having specific targets for the investment targeting a share of women-led enterprises or women-led smallholders. And then what we have in terms of our legal agreements is actually the follow-up mechanisms to ensure that those are actually being flowed through, the legal agreements flowed through the funding and then monitored as well over time. So the example that I gave was a UNDP project actually in Zambia, which targeted having 63% of the beneficiaries actually being women. The other example we had is in terms of supporting women-led businesses. You can actually have targets around using women-led businesses for procurement of the goods and services that will be used within that funding proposal. So there are a couple of the ways in which our projects are proactively, again, recognizing that we do need to take that action. As Zineb said, we have to be intentional about it if we are going to make a change, but then following that through with good project design and then actual monitoring, reporting, and the implementation on the ground.
Thank you very much. Then I'm sorry you have to stop the session now because the next is coming. If you have any questions to our panelists, please free to come on the stage and ask your own questions. So thank you very much for the audience for attending the event, and thanks again to the IDFC Club. Thank you very much.